look, this is part of the whole inside the D.C. Mentality. You know, you scratch my back, I scratch yours, and obviously this is what was going on here in Chicago with her here. She was associated with this city for many years with the University of Chicago. She clerked for Abner Mikva, you know, this U.S. judge, as far as they're concerned, here walks on water. So, you know, if he says she's good, you know, everybody falls into place.
Okay, let's look at the economy. In free fall, markets down worldwide, the euro in danger of collapsing. What's your research on where this is going?
Well, I think we're seeing a meltdown. Certainly, you know, we saw what happened in Thailand, where there was a Tiananmen Square style massacre of the farmers who came in, who were very upset about what's going on in that country, with more money going to the elites. My prediction there is Thailand will now be engaged in a full-scale civil war, with the have-nots going after the haves, especially in the smaller cities and in the rural areas. Greece, they're marching on the parliament today. They again are trying to take it over. With the deals worked out with Spain and Portugal, and there was an attempt to storm the Irish parliament a few weeks ago. Iceland, you know, the people there are not going to pay for the. I think people just had. Now we hear Sarkozy threatening to pull out of the euro. Merkel banning naked short selling in Germany. I think maybe some of these leaders are starting to hear the message. They should have heard it earlier on, but I think they're worried. I think the reason they're taking these actions is they're very worried about what they're seeing on the streets. You know, shopping malls going up in flames in Bangkok, banks being bombed in Athens, you know, people marching.
Banks being bombed in Canada. Banks being firebombed in Canada.
Right. And now we see the Gulf of Mexico turning into a dead zone, and I just wonder how long it's going to take for people to reach that level of frustration here. I would note that more people filed for unemployment last month than previously, so Obama's all his brouhaha about unemployment coming down is merely rhetoric and not even true.
Well, going back to domestic developments, and we're going to come back and talk about your research and the story you've got out about BP and the admitted cover-up there. I mean, every day they admit it was worse than what they had originally said, and they knowingly lied. But Rand Paul winning the primary in Kentucky by 30-plus points, the Republican incumbent losing in the primary in Utah, Spectre going down, Zbigniew Brzezinski coming out on video and saying the world has never been this awake to our world government. We are in trouble. To the CFR. I mean, they are not invincible, are they?
No, and I think what they're seeing, as I said, you know, when people are getting, you know, thousands, tens of thousands of people hit the streets, go on general strikes. We're seeing it all over Europe and Asia. We remember the food riots a few years ago popping up in places like Haiti and in Africa. We may see that happen again. But this is something where the have-nots, and there's increasingly more have-nots than there are the elite haves, and I think they're worried. They have good reason to be worried. And with now again the Gulf Coast being decimated as it was, they were just coming back from Katrina. They would, you know, never get back to where they were, and now this happens, and we find out that the White House, the Coast Guard, Janet Napolitano, head of Homeland Security that controls the Coast Guard, are engaged in this massive cover-up and providing cover for BP. And I have a story out today. There's BP expanded its refinery down here on Lake Michigan in Hammond, Indiana. They made promises to offset increased pollution in the lake. They would take certain steps to fund pollution mitigation for other plants on Lake Michigan. They never did this, and Lisa Jackson, who's Obama's EPA administrator, has done nothing to hold BP's feet to the fire. And what I'm told here is that what this plan. Well,
stay there. We got a break. Come back and tell us on the other side, and a lot more with Wayne Madsen. Okay, Wayne, you got cut off by that break. Wayne Madsen and WayneMadsenReport.com, investigative journalist. You were getting down to the bottom line with what's happening with BP.
They've got this plant that they've expanded on Lake Michigan that's processing heavy Canadian crude. They have reneged on all the promises they made to the court when the environmental groups up here sued BP. The courts, of course, like many, would found in their favor, but said they promised they would take mitigating. They would do this mitigation to prevent their increased pollution from having an effect on Lake Michigan. But what I'm told here is that this Hammond refinery is an accident waiting to happen. They have a record of safety violations, environmental violations, and that what's going on in the Gulf of Mexico today could easily happen to Lake Michigan. Affect all, not only the city of Chicago, but all the other cities and towns on Lake Michigan. And the Obama administration has done nothing. EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson has done nothing to hold BP's feet to the fire, just like we're seeing them provide cover for them in the Gulf. And I would note that when this issue came up with the expansion of the refinery in Hammond, Indiana, BP was caught. Well, they were taking full-page ads out in papers defending its position, defending the plant, defending its request for a permit to expand the plant. But it was also found out they were paying Internet bloggers to go out and trash anybody who criticized this expansion of the plant. And I would note that that's going on right now with people who are reporting, including myself, people who are reporting what the government's covering up in the Gulf of Mexico. BP is paying Internet bloggers, and they're sponsoring websites to attack any information that runs counter to their PR department.
Well, that was my next point, is have you seen the CBS News piece? It's up on Infowars.com.
I have, and this is no... Because what I reported is the Coast Guard is part of the problem. It's part of the Homeland Security Department under Napolitano. The Coast Guard is basically covering for BP on orders of Napolitano. But this is really irritating people that I'm hearing from with the Army Corps of Engineers. And believe it or not, FEMA comes out smelling like a rose here. FEMA's really upset that what they're seeing with NOAA and the Coast Guard and the EPA covering up for what they've seen as a huge disaster. And well,
for those that just joined us, all over the Gulf Coast, if anybody tries to go up, including CBS News, with video cameras on public beaches to show the oil, armed men come up and say, get out of here. I mean, this is not America. And going back 3 years ago, a few years after Katrina, Greg Palast of the BBC was working for ABC on the story. He went and showed one of these FEMA facilities that was holding people, in these trailers of these emergency communities, and Palast tried to videotape that was right next to a chemical dump, and they put out an arrest warrant for him that got retracted for terrorism, for violating national infrastructure security. So if we're wondering where the government's going under the Patriot Act, they are using it to cover up real environmental problems.
And in that CBS video, that footage, the two Coast Guard guys tell CBS, the CBS crew, we're following BP rules here. We're under BP. Well, since when did the Coast Guard take orders from BP? I thought it was the other way around. So I think this is further proof of what's happening with corporate fascism in this country.
It's incredible. I mean, all over the nation, you'll try to videotape, a police car from 100 yards away. They'll come over and say, turn your camera off and arrest you. Or you try to show what BP's doing. They threaten to arrest you. I mean, it's just no First Amendment. And then you got Kagan, who openly says she doesn't believe in the First Amendment. They're like, oh, great, another Goldman Sachs crook. This is who we need as the new Supreme Court justice. I mean, this is tyranny on every front.